Hello, and welcome to the instructional video for student organization budget and spending processes. This video will walk you through each step of requesting and spending your group's funds for a particular event. At the end of this video, you should be able to successfully complete an OBC budget request, complete the SALP accounting request to spend money form to process payments for the approved expenditures, and you will be aware of additional resources available to help complete these processes. Let's get started. Budget and spending is a two-step process. Step 1 is to request permission to spend money through the OBC. After OBC approval, Step 2 is to request the SALP accounting team complete the necessary transactions to actually spend your group's funds. Before starting the budget and spending processes, you'll need to make sure the date of your event gives you enough time to complete both processes. It usually takes a minimum of 6 weeks to successfully plan an event. Use backwards planning to identify the date you hope to have the event. Then count backwards using the processing times required by the SALP accounting team. Events that include performers, speakers, and catering require 20 business days for the SALP accounting team to process. So, depending on the type of accounting requests you'll need, the processing times can range from 2 to 20 business days. After identifying the deadline to submit the accounting request to spend money, count backwards an additional 10 business days to provide time to submit your OBC budget request for review and approval. Remember, the timeline for the accounting requests to spend money begins after you receive OBC approval. If you have plenty of time, go ahead and begin building the OBC budget request. But if you find that you do not have enough time to complete these processes, brainstorm with your group to find a date later in the term. To complete OBC budget requests, you must have an existing OrgSync account with a login and password, and also have administrator access to your group's portal. OBC budget requests are housed in individual group portals. If you don't have an OrgSync account, you'll need to create one, and you'll need to contact the current leaders of the group or your SALP advisor for further instructions on how to join the group's portal and obtain administrator access. And just to clarify, if you're planning to use funds from your base operating budget to cover small or immediate expenses, you won't need to complete a budget request. Your SALP advisor can work with you to gain approval and access to spend from your base operating budget. Now let's start building a budget request. Log on to OrgSync. Click on My Memberships. Find your student group's name and click to access your organization's portal. Once in the portal, hover the mouse over the More arrow and scroll down to locate the Treasury button. Click on the Treasury button and then click on Manage Budgets. All budgets are saved in your group's treasury. Notice the Period drop-down menu. You can access the present year as well as past school years. Reviewing your previous year's budgets can be very helpful when beginning to plan annual events or to get an idea of previous year's spending. This page will also show you all the budgets that have been submitted during the current year. To begin a new budget request, click the New Budget button and begin filling in the fields, starting with the budget name. Typically, this is the name of the event. Select a budget category. The most common category is Program Request, which is used for budgets for group events. Travel requests are for group travel to conferences and competitions. The Promotional Items category is only for items that are being purchased to advertise and recruit groups to your group. Do not use this category to enter promotional items for a specific event. Promotional items for events should be included in the Program Request category for the event. Once you choose a category from the drop-down menu, the program form will appear with a set of questions pertaining to the specific category requested. Complete all of the questions in this window. Click Done when you've finished answering all of the questions. You will need to create line items for each type of expense. For example, a line item for AV costs, a line item for food, or a line item for copying. You can add additional line item spaces by selecting the Add Line Item link. You must also include supporting documentation for each line item of expense. Examples of documentation are order confirmations, invoices, screenshots of online communication, and photos of quotes. The OBC has created two forms that are really helpful when inviting speakers or performers, planning your budget, and gathering documentation. You can access those templates on the OBC portal. If your event will have food, you must upload a copy of the flyer or draft flyer and include your group's name and PSU on the flyer. You can work on the budget, save it, exit, and return later to continue working. Everyone with administrator access to the group's portal can access draft budgets. As your group receives quotes and finalizes details, multiple group members can build the budget. Once all questions are answered and the required documentation is uploaded, click Submit. After the budget is submitted, you will not be able to make changes or edits to the budget, but you may continue to upload documentation. Your SALP advisor will review your budget request and may contact you with questions or any changes that are required. When the budget is complete, your advisor will either change the status to deferred and send the budget onto the OBC for review, reopen the budget for your group and add additional information or documentation, or deny the budget request if it is in violation of any policies. After your SALP advisor changes the status to deferred, the budget enters the OBC queue for review. OBC meeting dates and agendas are sent out to all group email accounts at least 24 hours before each meeting. If your budget is on the OBC agenda, it's a good practice for a group representative to attend the meeting to answer questions or address concerns immediately. The OBC will decide whether they will approve all or partial spending for the budget. Now it's time to actually spend your money, which is step 2 of this process. Getting approval from the OBC grants you permission to access and spend the funds listed in your budget request. You must complete the Request to Spend Money form, which the SALP accounting team will process to actually spend funds. This step is extremely time sensitive, and processing time requirements must be met. Separate requests to spend money forms must be submitted for each line item requiring payment made to vendors outside of PSU. You don't need to complete a request to spend money form for vendors that are within the university. These include Aramark, Cavett, PSPS, or space requests, excluding the University Place Hotel. If you're unsure if you need to complete a request to spend money form for certain line items, check with your SALP advisor. Let's begin working on the Request to Spend Money form. Log on to your OrgSync account. Click on the My Memberships tab near the right top of the screen and select SALP Administrators Club. This is a different portal than the Budget Request portal. If you don't see SALP Admin Club listed in your memberships, you're not an admin user. You'll need to contact your SALP advisor to obtain access to the SALP Admin Club. This process can take 2 to 5 business days, and you must also meet the minimum GPA requirements to be given access. Click on the Forms in the center of the navigation menu or the quick link in the top center. From the list of forms, select Request to Spend Money. At the top of the next page, you'll see the required processing time as well as definitions for each of the types of expenses or requests to spend money. Below that, click on the Begin Form button. Complete all fields of this form. A lot of this information can be copied and pasted from the OBC budget request form that you completed earlier. Use the previous button to review or change any of your answers. To submit the form, click the Finish button. This step is super important. If you don't click Finish, the form is not visible to your SALP advisor and your request will not be processed. Requests to spend money forms are processed the same way as budget requests. Your SALP advisor will review the request, correct or clarify information, change the status to deferred to send the request on to the SALP accounting team. Once deferred to the SALP accounting team, any communication with questions or concerns will be be between the SALP accountant and the student who submitted the request. When you've submitted all of the required requests to send money forms, you are officially done with the budget and spending processes for the event your group is planning. There are a number of additional resources that can help complete the budget and spending processes. The OBC's OrgSync portal has information regarding their guidelines, funding policies, and blank budget speaker and performer templates. The SALP Admin Club houses a number of resources in the Files section, including guides for planning events and a folder with documentation for previously used restaurants and caterers. The SALP Student Resource Center has a wealth of information from accounting processing times for different types of requests to spend money forms, brainstorming and reserving event venue spaces, choosing and planning food for your event, reserving sound and lighting, and screenshots of the step-by-step instructions we just covered in this video. It may be helpful to bookmark the SALP Student Resource Center page for reference when questions arise. This concludes the instructional video on how to navigate the budget request and spending process for SALP student leaders. If you have further questions or need support completing these processes, please contact your SALP advisor. Thank you for watching and good luck planning your next great event.